Hello. Hello. I'm Amit and Shiva. Can you hear me? So, right. So we'll start the session. Can you hear my voice clearly, or you're hearing some noise from my end? Any noise from my end?
I can hear you.
Okay, fine. All right. So in the last class, we have talked about all the different client tools, Power Center client tools. So what are the Power Center client tools we have? Yes. What are the different Power Center client tools? Shiva? Yeah.
Repository, developer, workflow monitor,
Power Center Repository Manager, Power Center Designer.
Designer or developer.
Designer. No, it's only designer.
Okay.
Power Center Workflow Manager.
Workflow
Power
monitor.
Center Workflow Monitor. So these are the four client tools that we have it. Now, what is the purpose of each client tool? What is the usage of Power Center Repository Manager?
It's create a folder as well as it's used for migration and
yeah, it is used for performing the migration, right? And what is the purpose of designer? Yes.
It's a design part as well as the mapping connections. Mapping designer.
Yes. Right. So here you have the mapping designer where you can design the mappings. Okay. Now, for creating the mapping, what are the components that are required? What are the objects that are required?
We need a source and target.
We need the source.
Target.
We need the target.
And transformation.
Yes. Right. So we require the source definition. We require the target definition. And we require the transformation. See, out of the three, transformation is something optional in nature. Okay. That is something you need to understand. Optional means you can create it without the transformation. You can create it with the transformation. Okay. Understood. Okay. So when you're, yeah.
What do you mean by you can create it with or without the transformation?
See, basically, whenever you're creating a ETL or whenever you're creating a mapping, you require the source and you require the target. Okay. A source is required and a target is required. But the transformation, you can create it based on the requirement. Means it is optional in nature. It can be present or it is not required. Okay. It can be there, it cannot be there. You can directly load the data from source to the target, but if there is a requirement, you can load the data by transforming the data also, or you can directly load into the target also. Okay. So
then what is the purpose of then ETL if you're just loading from source to target without the transformation involved?
Yes, sometimes it happens. See, basically, when you look into the architecture of the data warehouse, you first load the data into the staging area, right? Okay.
Right.
You load the data into the staging area. Now, when you're loading the data into the staging area, for example, let's assume your source data is present in SAP. Okay. And your source data, let's say, present in mainframes. Now, when you have the data within these online systems, let's assume these are the online systems. Okay. You have the real-time data here. These are the online databases. These are the online applications, and you need to get the data from these online systems to the staging area. Now, just assume this data you have the access only from 10 o'clock to 10:30. This one you have the access from 11 o'clock to 11:30. Okay. So within this point of time, within this half an hour span, you need to get the data into the staging area. Okay. Now at this point of time, what you do is that you extract the data and you load the data into the staging tables directly. So are you performing any transformation here? No, I'm not performing any transformation. Why? Because if I perform the transformation, it might take more data, more time to read the data from these applications because these are online. Okay. And yeah, so that's the reason I'm not using any transformation here. So transformation can be used, cannot be used. But in this scenario, I'm not using it because if I use transformation, it's going to take extra time for extracting the data from the source. So in the meantime, I might lose a connection.
Okay.
So once the data comes into the staging area, you know, I can do data is our end. Okay, data is present in our end. Now I can perform the transformation and load the data into the ODS or whatever data warehouse. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how. So a transformation is something optional in nature where you can directly load the data from source to the target, or you can transform the data based on the requirement. So this is the importance of having the Power Center designer. And what is the purpose of workflow manager? What is the purpose of workflow manager?
Every designer needs to create a session for all the mappings, so workflow manager will kickstart the session.
Exactly. So workflow manager is a place where you can create the workflow as well as the session. So what is meant by session? Session is nothing but a task which runs the mapping. Okay, you create a session on top of a mapping. Now what is meant by workflow? Workflow is nothing but a start task. It's a start task which runs the session. Okay, basically it runs the session. So workflow runs the session. What does the session contain? It contains the mapping. In the same way, a workflow can run multiple sessions. A workflow can run multiple sessions. So that's how it works. And yeah, so within the workflow manager, you can basically create session as well as the workflow. Now, what is the purpose of workflow monitor? Workflow monitor is basically there where you can monitor, monitor, monitor where you can monitor the jobs, where you can monitor the workflows and sessions running on Informatica server, running on Informatica server. Okay, right? So workflow monitor is a place where you can monitor the jobs, can basically monitor the jobs. Okay. Now in the current session, what we'll try to understand is that we'll try to see how the architecture of Informatica Power Center is basically built. Okay, architecture of Informatica Power Center. Now we understood that we have 4 different client tools, and all the 4 different client tools we have specific role which you can perform. Now when it comes to the architecture, what is the latest version of Power Center? Latest version of Power Center is 10 version. Latest version is 10, but we are going to understand Informatica Power Center 9.6 version. 9.6 version. Why? Because 10 version only the trial express edition is available, but 9.6 we have the standard edition. Okay, but we do have some. I'll explain you what are the changes that we have between 9.6 and 10. But in most of the projects, 10 is not yet migrated, so we are just using 9.6 for that. Okay, and there are cases where 9.1 is basically used. 9.1 is basically used in some projects, and 9.5 is also used more often. Okay, more it is used still. Yeah. Now, when you're working on Informatica Power Center, see basically there are the software is basically divided into two phases. You can see server and client. So there are two phases of the installation. One is Informatica client and you have Informatica server. Two phases are there. Okay, so before we understand what is Informatica client and Informatica server, what you need to understand here is that, see, basically when you have the Informatica software, you have Informatica Power Center plus data quality. You're getting this software as a package. Okay, so earlier, before 9.1 version, see, this is you're getting from 9 version, from Informatica 9 version onwards, you have a data quality and the Power Center as a single software. I mean, you're getting as a single package or a bundle. But earlier, before 9 version, what happened? Power Center is a separate software and data quality is a separate software. You know what is the Power Center, right? Informatica Power Center is a data integration application. It's a ETL process, ETL tool. Whereas what is meant by data quality? Data quality is nothing but it is a data profiling tool. Profiling tool means you can understand how the quality of the data is there by using the IDQ, Informatica data quality. Okay, so who is going to use that data quality tool? It is a data quality developer who basically work on this in order to understand the quality of the data. So IDQ is a separate software and Power Center is a separate software, but from 9 version onwards you have Power Center as well as the data quality. Both are present. So why I'm explaining this before is that when you are installing these softwares, basically you will see Power Center along with the data quality also. But if you have license only with the Power Center, you will see only the you will basically see only the Power Center. You can basically work only on the Power Center. If you have data quality license, you can work only on the data quality. Okay, so buying the Power Center license, even though you get data quality with that, you cannot use data quality. Okay, understood? So when you have the Power Center license, though you have data quality, you cannot use it. Okay, but you will get the data quality because it's a package. You will get it as a package. Okay, but you cannot. Yeah.
For these classes, we're only focused on the Power Center, right? Not data quality?
Correct. Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Right. So that's how it works. Now, why I'm saying this? Because when you're installing the Power Center, you will at one point you will see like you'll see like some of the some of the data quality softwares also, some of the data quality tools also. Okay, right. Now you have to understand like there are two phases in the installation of the Power Center. Okay, even there are two phases in the architecture of the Power Center. One is Infa client, Informatica Power Center client, and Informatica server. Two places are there, or two phases are there in the installation. So whenever you go with whenever you deal with Informatica client installation, you have Informatica client tools will be created. Okay, so you can see here, let's assume we have installed Informatica client tools. When you install Informatica client tools, two types of actually three types of clients will be appearing. One is Power Center client tools. Okay, and you can see data quality client tools, and one more client tool called as you have data transformation studio. So this is another client tool. This is basically another client tool. Okay, so Power Center client tools, data quality client tools, and data transformation studio. So what is meant by Power Center client tool? Power Center client tool is nothing but right? There are 4 Power Center clients. One is a repository manager, designer, workflow manager, and workflow monitor. So these are the 4 Power Center client tools that we have. At the same time, data quality client tools also you can see when you're installing Informatica client. What are the data quality client tools? One is Informatica developer, and you have something called as Informatica analyst. So these are the data quality client tools. And you have one more client tool called as data transformation studio. So data transformation studio is more like, it works on the XML data. It mostly works on the XML data. So that is a data transformation studio. You can see. So you have 3 different types of client tools are basically present. 3 different types of client tools. Okay. So whenever you are installing Power Center client tools, whatever you see here, you will be seeing 3 different client tools. When you install Informatica client, 3 different client tools can be seen. One is Power Center, one is data quality, and data transformation studio. Okay, so because you are able to have, because you have Informatica Power Center as well as Informatica data quality, you are able to see both the client tools here. Okay, so this is about Informatica client. Now this Informatica client is present all together in a separate machine. It is altogether present in a separate machine. But when it comes to Informatica server, when you come to Informatica server installation, there is a dependency with a database. You require a database before you go with the installation of Informatica server. It requires a database. So this database is called as Metadata Repository. This database is called as Metadata Repository. So whenever you're going with Informatica server installation, you have the dependency with the database. What kind of databases? You can configure the metadata repository on any of the 4 databases, like it could be Oracle, it could be SQL Server, it could be DB2, or it could be Sybase. So your database could be on any of these, your metadata repository could be on any of these databases: Oracle, SQL Server, DB2, and Sybase. So you can configure this metadata repository on any one of these databases. Okay, right? You require one license of this. For example, let's assume we have Oracle. So within the Oracle, you need to configure the metadata repository database. What is this metadata repository? Metadata repository is nothing but it's a separate database altogether. It's a separate database we need to create, and within the database we require 2 schemas. One is Infa DOM, another one is Infa REP. Okay, another one is Infa REP. So Infa DOM is something like we need, we basically here we will have some metadata tables. Okay, you will have some metadata tables within these 2 schemas. Okay, you will have some metadata tables. Okay, so basically within these two tables, you have the metadata tables, and these metadata tables, they store the metadata of your Power Center jobs. Okay, so metadata repository is required. It's nothing but a database, and when you have this database only, you can install Informatica Server. As simple as that. So why we have the dependency on this particular database is that it stores the metadata. It stores the metadata of your Informatica jobs, or it stores the metadata of your Informatica server. Okay, so that is the require. That is the reason we need one license of any of these databases, because on top of this we configure the metadata repository. Okay, are we clear with this? Are we clear with this so far?
Venkat,
Yeah.
so this metadata repository, it acts as like a backup or like a cache, or
No.
how is that?
It's a physical database. Okay. It's a physical database where it stores the metadata of your jobs. I'll tell you what is meant by metadata.
Okay.
So metadata, you know, right? The meaning, general meaning is data about data. Data about data is called as a metadata. Means, for example, let's say when you create some objects within your Informatica server, okay, when you create the objects, those objects names is called as a metadata. Okay, when you create a folder, when you create a ETL, when you create a mapping, when you create a session, when you create a workflow, okay, so those object names is called as a metadata. So that metadata of your Power Center client, the metadata of your Informatica server, both will be stored within this metadata repository.
Venkat, is it like an index in the DB2?
Index, I'm not really sure about that.
Okay.
See, every application will have this metadata repository, every application. Okay, so if you work on any reporting tools, you know, so you'll definitely have dependency on the database where it stores the metadata. Okay, yeah, all right. Now, when you go with the Informatica server installation, you have the dependency of the database. So let's assume the database is installed. Okay, one of the RDBMS, so let's say Oracle is installed, and within the Oracle, there is a separate database I have configured, and within that database, I created two different schemas, InfaDBM and InfaREP, and now the metadata repository is ready. So once the metadata repository is ready, then I can go ahead and install the Informatica server installation. When I do the Informatica server installation, the main component that is created is called as a domain. The main component that is created is called as a domain. So what do you mean by domain? So domain is nothing but, domain is a fundamental unit. Fundamental unit, or it's a primary unit which manages all activities in the Power Center. It basically manages all the activities in the Power Center. Okay, so that is what you call it as a domain. Now this domain, it contains, as I told you, domain is nothing but it's a fundamental unit. It's a fundamental unit which manages all the activities in the Power Center. Now this domain is basically created, means this Informatica server software is basically where it is created, where it is installed. It is installed on a mission. Okay, that mission is called as a node. That mission is called as a node. So what do you mean by node? It's nothing but logical representation. It's a logical representation of a mission. Means wherever you're installing domain, wherever you're installing Informatica server software, so that mission is called as a node. Okay, right? And within this domain, you can see even, you can basically configure some application services. Like you have, as I told you, right? Informatica Power Center is basically built on service-oriented architecture. Service-oriented architecture where you have a lot of services that can be configured within the domain. Okay, you have different services like repository service, integration service, model repository service, data integration service, metadata manager service. Okay, so these are all the different services that comes into the, that were present within the Informatica, within the domain. Okay, you can configure these services. You can basically configure these services within the domain. Understood. So when you are going with Informatica server installation, the main component that is created is domain. Where the domain is created, a domain is always created on top of a node. Okay, so within the domain you can create lot of services. These are all the application services that we have. Okay, so out of all these application services, what are we doing? We are basically performing the data integration. So in order to perform the data integration, we require two services. One is two important services that needs to be configured. One is integration service and repository service. These two services are important. These two services are mandatory. Repository service and integration service. These two services are mandatory and these two services needs to be configured within the domain. So what is the purpose of this repository service and what is the purpose of integration service? The purpose of repository service is it acts as a interface between Power Center client tools as well as metadata repository. It acts as an interface between Power Center client tools and the metadata repository, where using the repository service only, you can create the ETLs within the Power Center client tool. See, for example, if I open any of the client tool here, I'm opening Power Center Designer. Okay, now you see here, when you're opening the Power Center Designer, how you're able to connect to this, how you're able to connect to the designer. This is the repository service. Okay, by making use of the repository service only, you can connect to the designer. Means this repository service needs to be configured somewhere, correct? So that place is called as a domain. So within the domain, you can configure this repository service. So let me show that. Okay, now you can see these are all the different services you can configure. So this is the domain. Okay, so this is the domain and this is the node. So on top of this particular node, the domain is created. So how the domain is created, How the domain is created? When you install Informatica Server software, the domain is basically created. So within the domain, you can configure all these services. You can see Power Center Repository Service, Power Center Integration Service, Web Services. These are all the different services that we have. But out of all these different services, since we need to perform the data integration, we require these two services to be created: Power Center Repository Service and Power Center Integration Service. These two services are mandatory. Okay, so you can see that we have already created these two services here. So a lot of so you can see these are the repository services, these are the integration service. So you can create any number of repository service and you can create any number of integration services within the domain. Okay, so what is the purpose of this repository service is that, so using the repository service, you can connect to the Power Center client tools, and you can start creating the ETLs. You can basically start creating the ETLs by using the repository service. Okay, right? See here. So repository service acts as an interface between Power Center client tools as well as metadata repository. It acts as an interface. Why I'm saying acts as an interface is that when you create any ETL within the Power Center client tools, means when you create the folder, when you create a folder, okay, when you when you import your source, when you import your target, when you create a mapping, when you create a session, when you create a workflow. So when you do all these things within the Power Center client tools, okay, the repository service, it will bring that metadata, and it will store the metadata into the metadata repository. It will basically store the metadata into metadata repository. So it acts as an interface between the Power Center client tools as well as the metadata repository, and it stores the metadata here. It basically stores the metadata in the metadata repository. Now, what is the purpose of integration service? Integration service is nothing but a ETL engine. ETL engine in the sense, see, what you do within the Power Center client tools, you create the ETLs, you create the mappings, you create the session, and you create the workflow. But when you click on Start Workflow, what will happen? The data from the source is extracted. It is transformed according to the transformations that were present and loads the data into the target. So it extracts the data, transforms the data, and loads the data. Right? Now, in order to perform this ETL, we require one particular service, and that service is called as integration service. So what does the integration service do? It goes to the source, it extracts the data, it transforms the data according to the transformations that were created and loads the data into the target. So that is the importance of integration service. Okay, so this integration service, what does it do? It performs the ETL. It is also connected to the Power Center client tools, and it's the ETL engine which performs the process of ETL. So that is the importance of having the integration service. So who will run the jobs? Integration service runs the jobs, right? So how you can create the ETLs? By connecting to the repository service, we can basically create the ETLs. Okay, so see here, everything is interconnected. Everything is interconnected here. Now, how come the interaction between source and the Power Center client tools and the server will be formed by TCP/IP protocols? By using the TCP/IP protocols, the interaction between the Power Center client and the server will be formed. So that is how we have the Informatica Power Center architecture. Okay, so are we clear so far? Any questions on this?
Venkat.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm still a little bit confused about the whole repository service and how it stores the metadata about the RDWM inside the metadata repository. So, you said that the metadata is the data about the data,
Correct.
but what kind of data is that
Okay.
is that storing?
Okay. See, as I told you right now, it stores the metadata. So within the within the metadata repository, there will be, within this particular database, you have two schemas. One is Infa DOM and Infa REP. Okay. So Infa DOM basically stores the metadata of the domain. Infa DOM stores the metadata of the domain. What is the metadata of the domain? See, when you configure any other node, when you configure any other services, that related information will be stored in the Infa DOM schema. Okay. Now, what is the purpose of Infa REP? Infa REP is nothing but it stores the metadata, of your Power Center client tools. Means when you import your source, when you import your target, when you create a mapping, when you create a session, when you create a folder, when you create any other connections, that information will be loaded, will be stored into the Infa Rep tables, Infa Rep metadata tables. How it is stored? Repository service is going to store it. Okay, so repository service, which acts as the interface between Power Center client tools, and the metadata repository, it will basically store that metadata here. So what kind of metadata is that? Let me show it. See, for example, see here. So I configured the Infa REP connection here, and you can see these are all the different tables that were created. How these tables were created is that when you're configuring the Power Center repository service here, when you're configuring the Power Center repository service, these tables will be created in the schema. So these are all the different tables. There are a lot of tables as well as a lot of views are created. Totally 512 objects are created, 512 tables and views are created, and these tables basically just store the metadata. For example, there is a table called as OPB underscore SRC. So this OPB underscore SRC table, basically it contains the source information. Means whatever sources that you are using, that source information will be present within this OPB underscore SRC table. You can see this is what you call it as a metadata, the name of your sources. At the same time, all the target table, all the target information will be there in the OPB underscore TARG. You can see these are all the target names. So all the mapping names will be there in the OPB underscore mapping. All the mapping names will be there here. These are all the mapping names. Okay. All the session jobs and the workflow jobs are present in the place called as OPB underscore TS tasks. OPB underscore task. So this is the place where all your jobs, sessions and workflows information will be there. Okay, now you can see here within each table you have a separate set of data is present, and likewise you have 512 tables and views are basically present in the Infa Rep schema, which basically stores different information. Okay, so this is what you call it as a metadata. The names of your mappings, the names of your sources, targets, folders, everything is what you call it as a metadata, and this metadata is basically stored within the Infa Rep schema. How it is stored? Who is basically storing it? The repository service is basically storing it. The repository service, which acts as the interface between Power Center client tools and the metadata repository, it gets the details from the Power Center client tools, and it stores into the metadata repository schema. Okay, so are we clear on this? Any questions? Any questions? Yes.
I'm good. Thank you.
Venkat, little bit information about integration services.
So integration service is basically yeah. So integration service is basically like it is a ETL engine. So no, what happens? See, whenever you're running any job, let me open the workflow manager. So you can see in the workflow manager, you have the integration service. This is the integration service. So when you run the job, when you run the workflow, integration service is the one which goes into the source. It reads the data. Okay, it basically executes the mapping that you have created. So whatever mapping that you have created here, integration service is going to execute. So when you create a session and when you create a workflow and when you run that particular job, integration service, when you run the workflow, it runs the session. What does the session contain? Session contains this mapping. So it will execute this mapping. It goes into the source. It extracts the data. Okay. So whatever transformation that we have, based on those transformations, it will transform the data and it loads the data into the target. So in order to do this ETL process, extraction, transformation, and loading, basically you have this integration service. So integration service is the one which performs the ETL job. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Venkat.
Yeah. See, when you create the integration service, when you create the repository service, when you create any other services, that metadata will be stored into the Infa DOM schema. When you create any other ETLs in the Power Center client tools, this metadata will be stored in the Infa REP schema. So we require two schemas. See, I'm just giving these names. You can give any names to your schemas, but basically the combination of Infa DOM and Infa REP together is called as metadata repository.
Venkat,
Yeah.
just one more question. So
Yeah.
you showed me like in the what I can say in the workflow management and as well as you went to information admin area and you showed me like integration service and repository service, SAP BW services, and a lot
Correct.
of services are there. So as of now, you say that there is a two services we need to create it in servers. One is the integration service, another one is the repository services.
Right.
So how other services will be useful in this criteria? Because future,
Yes.
if which one is going to be static, which one going to be a volatile?
See, basically, in order to perform the data integration, we require these two mandatory services, repository service and the integration service. These are mandatory.
Okay.
Other services, it might be there, it might not be there. For example, let's say if you want to read the data from, from a particular website, then you require the web services. Okay, and if you want to perform the reporting, then you require the reporting service. See, as an Informatica developer, it is not necessary that you need to work on this, but you'll have these two services by default.
Okay. So one
Okay.
more. Yeah.
Other services are based on the requirement.
Okay. So this also it's covered in our lab exercise, Venkat, adding some more extra services or something like that.
No, no.
Okay.
Why? Because even when you go into the real-time project, these services are, there is no guarantee that you will save it because you can see model repository service, data integration service, analyst service, content management service. These four services are related to data quality. Okay, so when you have the data present in SAP BW, then you require the SAP BW service. Okay, metadata management service is something like if you want to build the reports based on the metadata, then you require this particular service. If you have the data present in the websites, or if you have the data present in, some example, let's say Yeah. For example, let's say you have data present in .NET. Okay, .NET. Or for example, let's say you loaded the data into your data warehouse, and you wanted to see once the data is loaded into the data warehouse, you will outsource this data warehouse data, right? Maybe for doing some analytics or something. Now, in order to outsource this data from the data warehouse, for example, let's say you want to send this data from the data warehouse to some SAP, some SAP service or some SAP tool. Now, how do you send the data from data warehouse to SAP? Data warehouse is nothing but a relational database. Then how do you send the data from database to some application? So in order to connect to this SAP, you require some web service. In order to send the data to SAP, you require some web service. So web service acts as a middleware. Web service basically acts as a middleware where you can connect to any kind of application service. I mean, any kind of application.
Thanks, Venkat.
Yeah, so that's how it works. So, when you're working on a data warehousing project, these two services are required. Any project, these two services are mandatory. Other services, we don't know. Okay, right. So you have very less chances of using the other services as an Informatica developer. Very less chance. Okay. All right. Now, as I told you, this is the Informatica server. Within the Informatica server, what do we have? We have the domain. So in order to access this Informatica server, you require a tool called as Informatica Administrator. So Informatica Administrator is a tool where you can access the Informatica server. So that is nothing but this one. So how the Informatica server is accessed? By means of the Informatica Administrator. So this Informatica Administrator is nothing but a web-based tool. What is that? It's a web-based tool where you can access the domain and you can create all the services related to the domain. Based on the requirement, you can create here. So this is the Informatica Administrator. So are we clear so far?
I'm good, Venkat.
Yes, Amit?
Yes,
Are we clear?
for the most part, yes.
Okay, yeah. All right, so that is about how you have the Informatica, how you have Informatica architecture. But when you're doing the installation, then you will understand it very clearly. Okay, so I'll be sharing the softwares today, okay, to you. So basically what you need to do is that I'm sending you 4 links. 4 links. One link is for Informatica server software. Another link is for Informatica client software. Okay. Another link is for the material, Infa material. So within this Infa material, I mean, when you click on that Infa material link, here you have almost 6 folders will be there. You have to download all the folders. Okay. And another link will be the Unix recording. So yeah, so 4 links I'm going to send you. So you have to download all the 4 links. You have to download all the 4 links, and all the 4 links will be, I mean, all the stuff which I'm sending will be in a zip format. They will be in a zip format. So what you need to do is that you can unzip them by using the WinRAR program. WinRAR. So you know what is the WinRAR software, right? Yeah. So using the WinRAR, you can unzip all this. Okay. Right. At the same time, you need to unzip this Informatica client 2 times. So I have zipped it twice. You need to unzip it twice, basically. Okay.
Venkat, how about Oracle databases software? Because that is
Yeah,
also needs to be installed, right?
correct. So that is there in the Infa material. So if you click on Infa Material, maybe let me show it once, then you can understand.
You said like SQL recordings as well. So this is around
I'll send it.
Yeah.
I'll send it. Yeah. So Amit, can you share your email IDs, both of you, Amit and Shiva? Ping your email IDs. Okay. So now you can see. So this is the material which I'm sending you, and 4 links were there. Okay. So this is the Informatica server. You need to yeah. When you click on this, it will take you to the Hotmail. Okay. You need to install. You need to sign up for Hotmail if you don't have it. Okay. So once you sign up and sign in with the Hotmail account, then you can download the Informatica server one. Okay. So once you download the Informatica server, you need to unzip it. At the same time, Infa Material. So when you click on this Infa Material, let me send and show that. See. So this is a Unix Informatica client. When you click on this Informatica client, then it will download the software automatically. Yeah, this is the Informatica client installer. Okay. Client software, you need to download it. And Informatica Material, Infa Material, as I told you, right? Infa Material is another link. When you click on this Infa Material, you will be able to see 6 files or 6 folders here. So this is the Informatica admin material, and this is admin material. This is developer material, and you have the software folder is there. So download the software folder. Within this, you have Oracle database, SQL developer. So Informatica license key, everything is there. And yeah, this is testing material and performance tuning. So you need to download all this. Okay. So how many you have to download? You need to download Informatica server software, unzip it, client software, unzip it twice, Infa Material, unzip it, and Unix. Okay. So I have sent you already. You need to download all the softwares and unzip it. So by tomorrow, you need to download and unzip both Informatica client and server. Okay. Everything you have to download and unzip them. Okay. So that we can just go ahead and install the software. Okay. Are we clear on this? Are we clear on this?
Venkat,
Yeah.
are you going to send just this specific recording as well? So in case we need to refer back to it?
Okay. See, basically the recordings will be uploaded into the same Google Drive, which was sent by big classes. So I think you already should have received the Google Drive link.
I
So every day the recordings will be there in that particular drive. Okay?
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
You can refer to that by checking
And
the drive.
and unzipping, I did the WinRare that I have to program. I need to download something, or how?
WinRAR, yeah. So let me send you that WinRAR software link. You can just
Yeah.
download and install it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Make a right click on that particular software, and you can unzip it. See, what you need to do is that. Let me show you. See, let's assume this is. Yeah, you can see. Let's say I want to unzip a particular. See, let's say I want, see, this is a zipped format, okay, and make a right click on it and click on extract to, then it will be unzipping. So once you have installed WinRAR, then you will be seeing this option, extract to.
All right, so before anything, just download the WinRAR, right?
WinRAR and install it.
Okay.
Then you can unzip it. Okay.
Is there a special key or code that we have to
Nothing,
put?
nothing,
Okay.
nothing,
All right.
nothing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So any more questions? Any more questions?
I'm good. Thanks.
Yes, Shiva, any questions?
No, I'm good.
All right. So yeah, so that's all for today. Just refer to the recording before we start with the next session, because every day, whenever you're done with your, whenever the session is done, always make sure you refer to the recording, okay, before you come to the next session. Yeah, yeah. So that's all it is, and yeah.
I just want to make sure that this was the third session, right? So there's 3 recordings.
So Esther,
Because
today's
I
recording,
joined,
right?
I joined a
Today's,
little late.
yeah, we have done till then. So those recordings were correct one. Yeah. So till now we had, this is the 4th session. So 3 recordings should be available, and 4th recording will be available by tomorrow morning of your time.
Okay, because this is only my 3rd session. So
Correct. Okay, I think you missed the first session, I guess. Yeah.
okay, all right.
Okay. Okay then. So all right, yeah. So that's all for today. We'll meet in the next class then. Tomorrow we'll have the session at the same time. Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.